quality and safety issues over recent years, and there has been a significant amount of investment that's gone into the trust over recent years, especially in terms of quality and safety of our services. That has led to quite a significant overspend and a deficit plan for 23-24. So one of the big things we've been really keen on is getting that engagement in finance across the whole organisation, really, and where we can try and save money and provide the best care possible. So I will hand over to Martin, Gemma and Tricia, who will go through the slides in terms of the offer that we've got. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, so I'm Tricia Penny. I'm the Finance Staff Development Lead for the department. So I'm just going to go quickly over what we're going to cover in this presentation. So we're going to do a bit on the background, so pre-COVID, what were we doing, what happened during COVID, etc. And then after COVID, what was the challenge that we faced in terms of redesigning our budget holder training? What did we do? How did we address these challenges? Then we'll do a bit about what we cover in our budget holder training, and we've got some example slides from our package that we deliver. Then a bit on the consultant step training, new manager training that we offer, and again some example slides. And then one of the key things about what have we learnt from these training sessions, what were the key outcomes, and what are we doing to to keep our training up to date, etc. And then we've got a spot for any questions that you might have at the end. So I'll pass over to Martin now for the next slide.
Thanks, Tricia. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Hall. I'm the Senior Finance Business Partner for Clinical Support Services here at SAF. So, yeah, before COVID, life was simple, wasn't it? And it was so much different. So what we had, we did have budget holder training. We did. It was held quarterly. The feedback wasn't great. They enjoyed the face-to-face nature of our training, enabled them to interact. But our sessions weren't necessarily hitting the mark, was the feedback that we had. We did do, as I'm sure everybody here does as well, we do the informal training through budget holder meetings.
David?
Oh.
Hi, good afternoon. David Miller. I'm in the urgent and community care in West Kent.
Thank you. Hello, David from West Kent. So when COVID hit, obviously face-to-face, as happened, I'm sure, up and down the country in your teams as well, that ceased. So we did continue a level of training, but it was via Teams. Thanks, Tricia. So what happened then post-COVID? So the level of scrutiny on our finances increased. We had new budget holders over the pandemic. People had joined us, and perhaps we hadn't been able to get out to see them like we would do normally. And we knew as a team that we hadn't done the formal training, that had basically been put on hold whilst we dealt with the pandemic. So one of the things that we did was we held a session with our consultants. We created a particular slide deck for them, and the feedback was good, which is really encouraging. It is always good to engage with our clinicians. But one of the things we recognised was that one size wouldn't fit all. So what was good for the consultants wasn't necessarily going to be right for all of our budget holders. What we also had here in SAF was a new management training programme called STEP, which is Strive Towards Excellence programme. So we could sort of piggyback on existing support to our teams. We also had support from HMFA in terms of the financial stability assessment. So again, that just gave us a few pointers as the sort of things we should be talking to our teams about. And then what we also were seeking to do was get to level 2 FFF accreditation, which we did achieve, which is great. But what, as part of that process, what it also needed us to do is just evidence our formal training. So again, it just sort of just challenged us to up our game, should we say. Thanks, Tricia. So what do we do? So we developed one slide pack. It was initially, say, for new managers and consultants. So what is part of that, we had, as I say, whilst we had new starters in the trust we were trying to reach out to, we also had new starters in the finance department. Dare I say, young and old in terms of experience. But what that was really good at was people came in with different views, different experiences, different knowledge. So basically pinch with pride. We make no bones about that. So some of the things you'll see today, they are accessible to all. We've just simply taken them and applied them because we think it fits into our programme. As I've already referred back to, is that we took the feedback on board from our colleagues as to what sort of things would they like to see. But it's also in the how they would like to see it as well. So we made our sessions far more interactive than what they were before. So we use King's Fun videos, Menti, which we'll come back to if you haven't seen it before, and also something called Go Compare, which isn't actually what you think it is, but it sort of is. But it's really good, and we've had some really great feedback on that. But I'll be doing that a bit later on, so I can explain that to you. We've adapted the presentation to suit the audience. I know that sounds really, really obvious, but it's one of the things that we've really focused in on. And we have 3 sessions, one for financial management, one for financial accounts, and then we also bring our procurement colleagues in as well. We've also not missed the opportunity to get into our own training diary. So this is what SAF uses for everybody to book onto their courses. So any course you need to do or would like to do, we use what's called the training diary. So it's accessible to all. So we've got that out there. And as we sort of say, thankfully, post-COVID, we now do all the sessions face-to-face, but we do one on Teams because we're just mindful that we do have people that prefer Teams and some people that, quite frankly, Teams is more accessible to them. So, yeah, so we've done a lot, and what we'll now do is we'll start talking you through some of those things. Back to you, Tricia.
Okay, thanks, Martin. So what do we cover in our budget holder training? As Martin said, it's divided into 3 sections. Originally, we set all these up for 2 hours, but I think we've delivered probably 7 or 8 sessions now, and every single time we've gone over time. So we've now extended it to 2.5 hours, and we've also put in a short break in because, you know, people need a break when you've got a session that long. So the first session, the financial management section, is the longest one. Was originally planned for an hour, but more like 90 minutes. We give an overview of the trust's I&E position, do some information on how the NHS is organised, how we spend our money, what does £1 billion buy us. That's quite an eye-opener for some people. A section on what things cost, principles of budgeting, how to prepare business cases and the approval process in the trust that needs to be followed. Basics of CIP and where we are currently on delivering those targets. And then the last session on budget reports and the nominal role with an interactive session. That's the session that always tends to run over. And looking at the feedback, we do find that a lot of the budget managers are particularly interested, or they're interested in it all, but that's quite often the bit that they want to spend more time on. So as part of sort of reflecting on what we're delivering, we are looking at splitting that section out and offering separate training so that we can invest, you know, more time in delivering that, rather than it being at the end of this session and sometimes perhaps slightly rushed. Then we move on to our financial accounts session. Our financial accounts colleagues come in and deliver a session talking about annual reporting accounts, what the cash is and the treasury management setup is, a bit about capital, the infamous IFRS 16, and then just a little bit on each of the departments, payroll, accounts payable, receivable, and Oracle and charitable funds. And then we move on to the last session when our procurement colleagues come in for 30 minutes and talk about SFIs, quotes and tender limits in the trust, frameworks, competition waivers, and all the other things. I won't read them all out that are listed there. So that is basically what our budget holder training package consists of. Okay, now I'll hand you over to Gemma, is it? Or might be Martin.
No, hi, I'm Gemma Park. I'm Senior Finance Business Partner here at SAF as well. And I'm just going to run you through a couple of the example slides that we use. So I haven't been at SAF long. I only joined in April this year, but my previous organisation was a big fan of Menti, which, if you haven't seen it, is what this this slide is. So Menti allows us just to be a little bit more interactive. So the first one of these sessions that I did actually was on Teams, and rather than talking into the void of silence that often can be in presentations, we did a Menti slide, and as you can see, it was what do you want to get from today's session, and everybody does then contribute to that. And ideally, obviously, we want them to say what we've got covered in the pack, but actually, if they do say something a little bit different to what we've got planned to cover, we do try and build in the time of our rather packed schedule to actually try and cover that off. But you can see everybody, this is a real slide. People they're interested, they want to build their understanding, how the funds are used, info on business cases. We haven't got any money, but it's always good for them to know that there's a process to follow, and budgeting, and budgeting, which is obviously predominantly why the majority of people are there. So I'm a big fan of Menti. It's free, at least it is in the basic level, and it just allows us to be that little bit more interactive. Thanks, Tricia. Next slide, please. We open with a quiz, just to see where people are in terms of their financial understanding. It's wide and varied. Clearly, we needed to work on what the NHS revenue expenditure limit was last year. More people got it wrong than right, but that's what we're there for. We're there to educate, there to help, and they find it useful. So more people seem to know the capital, and I'm utterly convinced that's a guess, but everybody fortunately did know what CIP stood for. So we take these things positively. Thanks, Tricia. I think, as we mentioned earlier, we do indeed pinch with pride. These are some slides that were freed from the King's Fund. These are a little bit out of date, actually. We do need to put the new ones up there. I think we can only get 9,700 consultants for our £1 billion. But we're just trying to reach people in ways that they can contextualise more. Everybody's got the view that that the NHS isn't funded by real money, up until the point you ask them if they'd like to work for free or if they've got mortgage payments. But who doesn't want to be a billionaire? Sounds great. But actually, when we start running through these slides, I think
on another one, I can't step out. Thank you. Oh.
It just adds a bit of a bit of thought process into actually what is £1 billion, how far does it go? And I think it's the slide where it says that £1 billion will fund the NHS for, I think it's now 2.4 days. It doesn't go very far. And it's just about, and so for us, it's just about using the tools that we've got out there without reinventing the wheel, but in a way that makes an impact on the people that are coming to learn from us. Thank you, Tricia. I think I'm back to Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. So this next bit builds on what Gemma's just said, is that we've got the whole interactive side of Menti, which has been fantastic. It gets just people involved. This next bit of information, it's free, it's out there. It's something I didn't know, but people absolutely love this bit of the ability just sort of say, so if I had one of those, and if I wanted one of those, how much does it cost? And it's a bit of fun, and it just gets people understanding, as Gemma's just referred to, when we talk about money and what stuff costs, oh my goodness, I didn't realise how much these things cost. So, and later on, we've got a list of where we've basically pinched these things from, and we'll share that with you. But this just makes it real for people. And again, it just gets them to just start thinking about money slightly differently. We all use the NHS. So when you use this Go Compare website, you flick on it and you can sort of say, yep, I've had 5 of those, I've had 2 of those, and it works out what the bill is, quite frankly. Now, if we've got any cost accountants here, then they'll be worrying, oh, I'm not quite sure that figure's quite right or not. That's fine, that's for us to worry about. But at a headline level, it engages, which is great. What you can also do on this website, and it's not on this slide, is you can also then put in your salary, and it will tell you what proportion of your salary will contribute towards the NHS as well. So again, it just helps with that interfacing with our colleagues, trying to make finances more understandable. So yeah, if you haven't got this, if you haven't seen it, please do so. Trust me, people will really, really like this slide. Thanks, Tricia. So we do a bit of business cases, as we've said before. So even though this part here perhaps isn't quite as exciting, shall we say, as a bit of Menti or a bit of the Go Compare stuff, we do just take them through. There's a bit of structure and process here. So yeah, we sort of have to go down a little bit of a drier route here, because business cases are there to improve our services. We know they are. So we just sort of talk them through. So the sorts of things that you'd need to consider as to what goes into a business case. But we don't miss the opportunities to sort of link in stuff like GIRFT and the model health system. These are, again, additional sources of information that people can use. And again, it is freely available to folk. But what we try to get them to just think through, so what are your options? What is it? What's the outcome you're looking for? And then how do you quantify that? So your benefits appraisal, your financial appraisal, have you involved everybody? The one that probably gets missed the most, I was suggesting quite a few business cases, is, and if it doesn't quite work out as we hope it does, how do we get out of it, the exit strategy? And then we do have the quality impact assessments as well. So we do a little bit on business cases. Again, it's just trying to get our teams to understand, as we sort of say, there isn't money out there, but there is. We spend an awful lot of it. We've just referenced that. How do we spend it wisely? And doing proper, robust business cases is a good mechanism to doing that, as I'm sure you'll all agree. Thanks, Tricia.
Okay, back to me now. So this is just an example of the budget exercise that we do, and from the feedback we get, a lot of people who do go to the budget holder training are particularly interested in this section, and this is one of the reasons why, as I said, we're looking at taking this out of the pack and well, perhaps still including it in the pack, but doing a separate more expanded session on this, because we do tend to have to be running out of time when we get to this section, so it'd be good to spend some more time on it. Basically, we usually do handouts of these slides as well, because they're quite hard to read on the screen, a lot of numbers, very condensed, but the aim is to go through the budget report, do a quick explanation of what all the columns are and what they mean, and the same with our nominal role, with our staffing costs. And then we do a budget exercise with them to check understanding. So we like to do this to get people into groups, and there's usually a few of us there doing the presenting, so we can go around and see if anybody needs any help, and just try and see if they can answer some of these questions that we put out to them. And you get quite a wide range of understanding from the people who come. So, you know, it's a good thing to cover, and we do want to expand this to get a bit more, spend a bit more time on it. Going on to the other sections of the slides, the financial accounts. This is just an example slide about lease definition, who has control over it. And then I've also included a slide from our procurement colleagues on standing financial instructions. So that's that. And then I think it's over to Gemma.
Thanks, Tricia. So as we mentioned earlier, one slide deck doesn't fit all, and as well as the budget holder training, which is obviously does have to focus on some of the slightly more litigious, drier aspects like standing financial instructions, as interesting as they are. With the consultant and the STEP programme, so Striving to Excellence programme, which is aimed at introduction to leadership, I suppose, for want of a better term. It's a day session that actually it's really well developed, and they want to have finance in it. So obviously we're excited. We've gone, and we've got a little bit more scope to cover some of the more interesting aspects. So we cover what we spend our money on, because again, we do that as part of the quiz. What are our top 5 biggest items that we spend our money on? And generally people are in a ballpark, but they don't tend to think about CNST or the finance costs. But again, that's part of the education route that we go down. Consultants are always interested in the income and how income is counted, and can quite easily have a full-blown conversation before we get beyond income. And again, it's interesting to get people to think about the different sources of income. It's from our patients, but but actually trying to drag that out of them as an answer is often quite difficult. People do tend to go, we get money from car parking. Actually, we don't at the moment, but we are going to upset people and bring it back. But it's just, again, where are people's interests? Where are they focusing on? And how do we draw that out to then cover some of the other bits? So we cover how the NHS is organised, with some nice borrowed slides that you will see in a second. We do a bit on the ICS. And again, got a King's Fund video that does that for us. We touch on the recovery support programme, because we feel very, very well loved and supported by our NHS England colleagues. I think we've got some on the call. We do business cases, efficiencies. Then we touch on capital, charitable funds, and a bit on the SFIs. And that is a picture of one of our training sessions with our happy recipients there. Thanks, Tricia. So these are a couple of just some of our example slides. So a bit on our recovery support programme. We cover off the annual timetable as well, of which it is. I don't think anybody will be able to read that too well, but we do cover off things like the national cost collections when we do financial year end, when the accounts are signed off, just to give things a little bit of context. And then we do how the NHS organised Health and Social Care Act. So that's one of the HFMA diagrams that's publicly available that we didn't need to redo, we were able to use the snipping tool. And again, just covers off a bit of the extra information. Next slide, please, Tricia. And again, just some more examples where we're trying to provide context. So the NHS funding receipts, and then how much we spend on health, and the fact that it's the second biggest expenditure in the UK. We quite like the world's biggest employers slide because that's the world, not just the UK, not just Europe, and the NHS is on there. We're not as high up as we used to be, but you know, we're in the terms of a population and a country, we're not that big compared to the rest of the world, but we are as a single organisation up there with the world's biggest. And then a slide which I think I liberated from the Guardian of where the money goes, and just the different breakdown of the different types of expenditure that we've got as a rough approximation. We accept that these things might not always be pound for pound perfect, but they give a view, and it's accessible, and it allows it just people can visualize it in a picture. I think that then is back to Martin.
It is. Thank you. So we don't miss the opportunity to promote one NHS Finance to our colleagues. Again, don't miss the opportunities that are there in front of you to get your own teams involved in what is a great network. Thanks, Tricia. So in terms of our learning then, I think you've probably, well, you've heard our story about how we've done it. So this in many ways is just a summary of what we've just been through. So making sure your slide deck is up to date. You've heard Gemma sort of just reference, we're on the lookout for updating a couple of our slides. We obviously still look out for other new things to engage, no matter what the source-ish, you know, copyright aside. You know, we've got to be a bit careful, but we are sensible, and we do just try to sort of go, right, we think that will apply to that audience, and therefore we'll dutifully pinch it. That makes it appropriate to the audience. We do ask, whether it be through Menti, you know, before they start, before the session starts, what is it that intrigues them? What floats their boat? What is it they want to get out of the session? So we'll try to make sure that we cover those. I think you can probably see from what we've done, we've taken from what was a particularly dry PowerPoint presentation. Nothing wrong with that. It said everything that it needed to, but we've really sort of jazzed it up a little bit in terms of some of the interactive content, and then putting in a bit of the King's Fund media, or whichever sources that you use. Just mixing it up a little bit just takes away from that dryness. I suspect most people on the call are probably or have been in financial management and will enjoy the face-to-face engagement, and some of those conversations, as Gemma just referenced, that a really good positive conversation to be had with a consultant about where the income comes from, and also where the costs are, what the premium costs are. You can have some lively debates, but if that's what people want to know, that's great. We can talk to them about it, and face-to-face is just a great way of doing it. But equally, Teams, as today's proving, is a really good medium as well. The feedback sheet, the feedback Menti, will tell us what we did well, what they would like next time, and even if it's not them next time, it'd be their colleagues next time, so the future colleagues. So asking for feedback, and that's what we've really learned an awful lot from the feedback that we've received. And as Tricia said, we're actually on the back of some of that feedback, we're developing some separate workshops to go through specifics where people have said, I'd like to have spent a bit more time on this aspect or that aspect of your training. So that's what we're doing, and it's great. So it's meeting the needs of our users. Thank you, Tricia. So as promised, these are some of the elements that we've used. So Menti, that's their website. How does NHS work is a YouTube video. The Little Man and the Go Compare is called the Bill of Health. And then we also use resources, HMFA, One Finance, etc., etc. So those are out there, and I just encourage you to, maybe just do a bit of Googling, but have a look and compare with others. If we all sort of shared what we did, we'd all have a fantastic presentation at the end of it, I would suggest. Thank you, Tricia.
So thank you very much to Gemma, Martin and Tricia for presenting that and just going through some of the finance training that we do have on offer. I don't know if anybody's got any questions, and we'll try and answer them as best as possible. I know some there has been some messages in the chat, hasn't there, already? So that's not a problem. I think we should be able to share this video, shouldn't we? Martin Moody.
Hiya, yeah. Do you know the Go Compare thing that you showed us? So if you do you put that up on the board and kind of go through it, or do you get everybody to log in on the phone or?
Yeah, so we put it up on the board and we just kind of go out to the audience and say, right, what would you know, what do you want to know the cost of things, and we just have a bit of an interactive session between us all, really.
Right.
But yeah, as Martin said, they are really interested in what does the cost of a broken arm, what's the cost of a broken arm, etc. One of the things we do you can do on that website is you can say how much is a GP appointment, or then actually we then do a bit of a story to say, well, actually this patient would have had a GP appointment and would have had a prescription and it would have cost X amount, but actually because they weren't able to get a GP appointment, they ended up in ED. They were then admitted and had a 3-day hospital stay, and you can compare the cost of that, and the audience do find that really interesting.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks.
We've had a question from Deborah Heron about how often we do the training. So we do the training monthly at the moment. And then we do the consultant training is quarterly, as is the step management program. Kirsty Williams got a hand up.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much for that. I thought it was really well presented and really informative. I've just got one question around whether this is the only training you provide, or whether there's anything on how to be a good budget holder and what sort of things they should be doing. So we do a similar type of training as yourself, although I'll definitely be stealing with Surpride some of the bits of it. But I find some people, particularly those that are new into the role, so they've just stepped up into a matron role, for example, don't really know what a good budget manager looks like. Do you do any of that sort of training?
So I think we pick a lot of it up in this training, but it's a lot wider. But as I think it was Martin touched on earlier, we do that kind of one-to-one training with new budget holders as well. Martin, I don't know if you want to come in terms of what you do within your division.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you identify those new people as early as you can, admitting that perhaps finance isn't their number one thing to do on day one, but if you can catch them on day two, that'd be great. I think it's about a bit of horses for courses, a little bit. So we do signpost them to the formal training. We do, as Adam just sort of said, we will sit them down and have a one-to-one session with them. It's probably worth saying is that as a finance team, we try to do that as far and wide as we can. So it's important that the whole of the team support the training that we're doing here. And then we'll give them some key contacts in finance. So if not necessarily for a matron necessarily, but it might just be that someone maybe in facilities might be interested in capital, and therefore he's your main link into our financial accounts team and the capital lead. So I think it's just trying to shape your your provision, I say back to the audience the best that you can, but always ask for feedback at the end. Did that do what you needed it to do? And don't be afraid if they sort of say no, then give it another go.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Davina.
Thank you. Hi. Apologies, I did miss a little bit at the beginning due to internet connections. I'm just wondering, do you do this? Is it only for new budget holders? Is it mandatory, and do they have to refresh over a certain number of years? These are all the sort of things I'm grappling with in my trust at the moment from refreshing the training programme. So I'm interested to see how you do it. Thank you.
Yeah. So it isn't mandatory, but we do strongly encourage all budget holders to book on. And we do have the aim of getting all of our budget holders retrained by the end of December. So what we said is when we kind of relaunched it is actually within 12 months, we'd like all budget holders to be retrained. It has helped that our executive colleagues have been really on board with this, so they have actually attended the training themselves, so they can then cascade it to their staff. So that does help massively. But no, it is quite difficult to make it mandatory training given everything else that goes into mandatory training. But we do strongly encourage people to attend.
Great, thank you.
Deborah, have you got your hand up again?
Yeah, hiya. Can I ask about, does your HR department do like separate training for budget holders and managers? And I'm asking because we're thinking about doing some sort of joint training with new team leaders and managers and stuff, because obviously a lot of the HR processes have a financial effect, overpayments and stuff because people don't know how to fill in the various leaving forms and change forms. Do you have that in your training anywhere, or does your HR department do something?
So our HR department they have a slot within the STEP sessions as well, and the consultant sessions, not specifically on the budget holder training, but we bring it in that way. But then our HR colleagues also do their own local training program. But that is one point that we could potentially link in more with them.
Thanks.
Any further questions? I know there are some questions in the chat as well. Looking through. So Mark, I think you've asked about any suggestions about how we could adapt this for the ICB world. I think a lot of it is quite generalised, and especially the King's Fund video, because that picks up around system working and obviously the abolishment of the CCGs and setting up of ICBs. So it could be that one is focused on quite a lot more than some of the bits that are specific to the acute hospitals. But I think everyone has SFIs, everyone has budget holders, and in terms of your budget holder reports on a monthly basis, I think that all of that could be used, but then focus on the more specific elements for the ICB, I'd suggest. I don't know if anybody else on from the ICB that has any thoughts on that. No, okay. Just looking through. I've got a question from Yasmin about what do we do if people are overspending against their budgets and recovery plans. So yes, we do that. So as part of our monthly budget holder meetings, we've got kind of the set questions and the action plans that are then reiterated to the individual budget holders, and then obviously each division where they are overspent has their local recovery plans as well. Gemma, I don't know if you want to pick up anything specific to medicine around that.
We do ask for recovery plans. We build it more into our forecast, which for us is predominantly focused on our staffing in medicine and emergency. So we do prospective looking in terms of recruitment and the pipeline, and where things go. And And that's actually, we've done an awful lot of work, or the team have, in getting the budget managers to understand how to fill that in from a practical point of view that they can then go through with their divisional director of nursing. So, and that then we are then able to use that as part of our overall workforce recovery plan, because of course we're overspending. And as it, but albeit I do think there could be something in terms of do we set out in our budget holder training what is the perfect budget holder? I don't think that there is such a thing, obviously, but actually that would be extremely helpful for what we are aspiring to do. So thank you, Yasmina. I think we'll pick that up.
Thank you, Gemma. Yasmina, did you want to come back in there?
Yes, thank you very much, Gemma. Thanks, everybody. Great presentation, and I'll take some points for the team to put into our own pack. But just so you know, we redesigned our budget reports because I looked at yours and I just thought the same response here. They were overwhelming. They didn't know where to look. What we included actually at the end is a kind of a bit of a run rate analysis. So if you carry on as you're spending or overspending now, this will be the impact potentially for the last year. And that has gone down an absolute treat because people just don't like that red number at the end of it. And that immediately, even before the budget holder meeting happens each month, triggers people into thinking. So it's working day 5. I've got my statement, I've seen it, and I'm already going to be prepared talking to my finance manager about it. So I just wanted to leave that with you because it's been the last months of fantastic feedback on that. It's just like revolutionary, which I thought, why didn't we do this earlier? You know, the obvious things, but and they prepare well in advance of the budget holder meeting. So just leave it out there. You don't have to do it, but just a recommendation. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. We've got a question from Lola.
Hi everyone, thank you. Really informative slide deck. Just a quick question around your turnout. So you said your sessions are now 2.5 hours. I wondered, do you get a lot of people signing up? It's quite a long time, even though it will be very beneficial.
We normally have between 15 and 20 attendees for each session. So it could be better, but actually it's quite a nice number because it makes it easy to work in individual groups. When we've done the consultant training sessions, we normally have about 10 consultants. The sessions that we've done so far, they are really engaged, and they're meant to be about an hour and a half session and end up being around 2 hours. So they do ask lots of questions as we go through. And then the step manager program is normally around 20 attendees as well. So it's quite well attended.
Thanks.
So then just looking through the remaining questions on the chat, we can share the slides, that's not a problem. I mean, there was a question around prospective budget holders. So yes, it's not just limited to existing budget holders. If you are thinking of becoming a budget holder, we're more than happy for them to attend, but also for the STEP program as well, because that looks at kind of new managers and future budget holders. So we encourage people to sign up to that. And then there was a question about HFMA bite size. So we don't use that in the sessions, but we do point people towards it through My ESR and being able to log on to those sessions that way as well. Okay, so I think that's answered all of the questions. I don't know if there's anything else that anybody wanted to pick up.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I don't think there's any more questions for now, but if there is, I'll make sure to forward them on to you all. This session's been recorded, so once it's been edited, I'll circulate the link and the slides. Yeah, I think that's it. If everyone's...
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and thank you very much for organising.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.